Kyle Busch says that Joe Gibbs did not try to sell him, and 2311 Racing is looking to run a third car at some point in 2024. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of the paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Brad Keselowski's 2024 Solomon Plumbing scheme that we'll see around 4 to 5 races in 2024. This scheme's pretty solid in my opinion, very similar to last year's scheme, but it's really good to see that Solomon Plumbing will continue working with Brad Keselowski in 2024. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Corey Heim's 2024 Safe Light scheme. Different than the last year's scheme, kind of different than the last few years the Safe Light schemes have been. I think this looks pretty solid in my opinion, and I'm definitely looking forward to see on the racetrack throughout 2024, though I do like the 2023 edition a lot better. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Busch's 2024 Morgan & Morgan scheme that we'll see at the Busch Light Clash this weekend. This looks very similar to last year's scheme that he ran in a couple races near the end of this season. I think it looks really good though. I love the yellow, I like everything about it. It looks pretty awesome in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Riley Herbst's 2024 Monster Energy scheme. Nothing changing with the scheme, but I do like it. Sometimes I like when things do not change. It looks pretty solid. Looking forward to see on the racetrack this season. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Todd Gilliland's 2024 Georgia Peanut scheme that we'll see at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Nothing changing with the scheme from 2023. It's very similar to last year's. I think it looks solid though. Hopefully he can run really well with the scheme and show a lot of good performances with the scheme throughout 2024 with that same paint scheme. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about BetMGM. As it was announced this afternoon that BetMGM has extended its relationship with Richard Childress Racing and will sponsor Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon once again in 2024. BetMGM has been working with RSR over the course of the last couple of years, and they sponsor Kyle Busch in multiple races in 2023. I think it's really exciting and really happy to see nonetheless that we will see BetMGM working with RSR once again in the 2024 season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Moose Fraternity. As it was announced yesterday that Moose Fraternity will sponsor Ros Chastin for 4 races in 2024. Moose Fraternity has been a loyal sponsor to Ros Chastin since around 2021, and I'm really glad to see that they'll continue working with Ros Chastin in 2024. I believe the paint scheme's already been revealed, but I think it's really exciting to see that Moose Fraternity nonetheless will continue working with Ros Chastin in the 2024 season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Love's Travel Stop. As it was announced earlier today that Love's Travel Stop has signed a multi-year extension with Front Row Motorsports. They'll sponsor Michael McDowell for 18 races in 2024 and Lane Riggs in the Truck Series for 11 races this year. Love's Travel Stop has been with Front Row for many years, and it's really good to see that they are going to continue working with Front Row Motorsports in 2024. Really happy they'll continue working and have that partnership with Front Row Motorsports for the 2024 season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Teardown. As it was announced yesterday that the Teardown will officially be joining Dirty Mo Media. For those who do not know, the Teardown is a podcast run by Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic, and I always tune in every single week to their podcast when there's a race that happens because I think their podcast is absolutely incredible and a really fun listen. If you've not been able to listen to it yet, I definitely recommend and suggest going out and listening to the podcast. And I'm really glad to see they are going to be working with Dirty Mo Media in 2024 and working with them this respective year. Really exciting and really awesome stuff overall. Pretty exciting to see that they are going to be working with them in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK. As RFK confirmed yesterday, they have announced RFK Tech Alliance. And according to what it is, it'll be to further strengthen its commitment to excellence in tech advancement. This is really cool in all honesty if they are going to be doing this. RFK is making a ton of massive moves. I think they announced a partnership earlier today that is going to be associated with this. I think it's really exciting to see that RFK is expanding. Obviously, they're going to have 2 full-time cars in Stage 60 next year. But I think it's pretty awesome to see that RFK is going to be doing some sort of tech alliance thing for 2024. I love they're doing this. I think this is really excellent. I think this is really awesome. Nonetheless, really glad to see that they have announced this Tech Alliance that they are going to be doing for 2024. Really excited and really happy for sure about this in regards to that. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Nita Strauss. As it was announced earlier today, according to Bob Parker, said Nita Strauss will play the national anthem at the Busch Light Clash. For those who don't know Nita Strauss, she is a guitarist that is part of Slash's band. I think he's been on tour with a lot of different bands and Alice Cooper's band as well for a very long time. She's a really good guitarist in my opinion, and I think she'll do a really solid and great job playing the guitar for the national anthem. I would like to see something a little more modern though for sure, but nonetheless I think it's really cool that Nita Strauss will get the opportunity and the chance to play the national anthem at the Busch Light Clash. Congratulations to her on getting the opportunity and chance to play at the Busch Light Clash at the Los Angeles Coliseum. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Canelo Alvarez. As it was announced last night that Canelo Alvarez will be the Grand Marshal for the Busch Light Clash. For those who don't know who Canelo Alvarez is one of the best boxers in the world. I think he's been in 62 or 63 career boxing matches, and he's won all but 2 or 3 of the boxing matches that he has been in. He's been an incredible boxer, and I think he'll do a very, very solid and a really good job giving the command for the Busch Light Clash this week. And hopefully weather doesn't become a factor in a major role this time around. I'm really excited about this, and again, I think Canelo will do a really good job giving the command. So very happy to see that Canelo will be giving the command for the Busch Light Clash in 2024, which of course is this weekend. Really exciting and awesome stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Trackside Live. As it was announced earlier in the weekend, the NASCAR Trackside Live will be returning in 2024. They'll be returning around 6 or 7 locations throughout the year. They'll be at both Bristol races. They're going to be, I believe, at Talladega. I think they're also going to be at Texas Motor Speedway, in Nashville, and a couple other places throughout 2024. NASCAR Trackside Live is run by Kenny Wallace, John Roberts, and of course, Jose as well. I think it is really, really awesome to see that they're bringing this back in 2024. It was a massive fan favorite thing that a lot of people really enjoyed and really, really loved when they brought it back for 2023. I think they're doing a really good thing in my opinion. Bringing it back is really the energy, the excitement. I went to the first time in 2022 and they tried it out at Gateway when I went to my first Cup Series race a few years ago, and the energy and the excitement around that event was phenomenal and incredible. So nonetheless, really happy and very glad to see that they are going to be bringing this back for 2024. Really happy about this. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Rolex 24. Now, the Rolex 24 happened over the weekend, and Team Penske was able to pick up the victory in this year's Rolex 24. First of all, congratulations to them on winning the Rolex 24. It's the first time that Team Penske has won the Rolex since, I believe, 1969. So it's been 55 years. I believe it's also either Porsche's 19th or 20th win in a class in the Rolex 24. So this is a massive and huge accomplishment for Team Penske. Now, there was a little controversy near the end of the race, basically because of the fact that they called the race about a minute or two early. I do believe they made a bad judgment call there to call it a minute or two. They did release a statement acknowledging that they did make the mistake. I don't know if they're going to correct this situation. I don't think they're planning to, but there's a rule in the technicality basically saying, hey, we made a mistake, but we basically made the rules, so we're not going to be changing the outcome of this event. Overall, I'm not surprised and shocked that they aren't changing the outcome of the race, but Team Penske was going to win other way, and I don't think it would have had any major effect on the outcome of the event. So nonetheless, huge congratulations to Team Penske once again on winning the Rolex 24 in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Conor Lich. Now, while Team Penske was able to win their class, Conor Lich was also able to win a Rolex watch and win the Rolex 22 in the LMP2 class. Conor Lich, who is under a development contract with Trackside Racing, drove for Era Motorsports in LMP2. And he did a really excellent and very good job. In fact, the times came out on the average median times, and Conor Lich was the 4th fastest driver overall in the whole LMP2 class. He is also only the second youngest winner in a class in the history of the Rolex 24. I think Michael Caseta is the youngest winner in the history. I think it's a little under 17. I think that Conor's lived about 17 years, about 6 or 7 months. So Conor winning a Rolex 24 just 17 and watching what he's able to do throughout the event was phenomenal and incredible. He's going to be a massive asset to Trackside Racing for many years down the road. It's really excellent. It's really awesome. And nonetheless, congratulations once again to Conor Lich on winning the 2024 Rolex 24 in the LMP2 class. Really exciting stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mike Verlander and Jennifer White. As it was announced on Friday that Mike Verlander, who was a former president of Busch Motorsports, will be joining Richard Childress Racing as Chief Operating Officer. And it was also confirmed that Jennifer White has been named the Chief Operating Marketing Officer of Richard Childress Racing. This is absolutely huge pickups. Like I've already mentioned, Mike Verlander had been the president of Busch Motorsports for the last couple of years. And now having him come to work with Richard Childress Racing, I think that is a massive and huge deal. RCR is making a ton of executive basically moves over the course of the last couple months over the offseason. I think back in December for Christmas, it was confirmed that Andy Petrie was going to be taking over, I think, as executive vice president of Richard Childress Racing. I think Justin Alexander has been promoted to one of the higher up positions in RCR. And now you've got the former president of Busch Motorsports. Obviously, Busch Motorsports no longer a thing anymore. Having him come in and work in this team is really phenomenal and incredible. Nonetheless, really awesome opportunity for Mike Verlander, and congratulations to him once again on getting the opportunity to join Richard Childress Racing in 2024. Congratulations to both of them on getting to join Richard Childress Racing. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cory Roper. As Cory Roper confirmed on Saturday, I think on the teardown or something on Sirius XM, that he will be driving a 04 truck for Roper Racing at Daytona and possibly Talladega as well. He also confirmed he's trying to have a rotation of drivers behind the wheel of the number 04 truck throughout the 2024 season. Remember, it's already been confirmed that Marco Andretti is going to run 7 Truck Series races in the 04 truck in 2024. As he'll, of course, working on a development deal, he is going to run 14 races in ARCA with Cook Racing Technologies. And we also know that the 04 will be bannered, I think, with Cook Racing Technologies. But, of course, they'll be using the Roper Racing equipment. My other speculation is more than likely what I think is going to happen is I think that you're going to potentially maybe see Landon Lewis come in and drive that truck at some point. Landon Lewis did make a few starts in the 04 truck in 2023, made his debut in Mid-Ohio, and honestly was very impressive at times in the event and showed a lot of pace and speed throughout the event at Mid-Ohio. Nonetheless, I'm very happy to see that Cory Roper is going to be back in 2024. We knew the team was going to be back, but we were not exactly sure if he was going to be returning in 2024 behind the wheel or not. I'm very happy about this and glad to see that he'll be once again returning in the 2024 season in a couple of races. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lando Norris. As it was announced earlier in the week or on Friday that Lando Norris has signed a multi-year contract extension with McLaren. Terms are not officially disclosed how long the contract extension is, but Lando Norris is expected to have a contract at least through the 2026 season. Lando Norris had a very solid year in 2023, had a bad start to the season, but as the year progressed, Lando Norris became an outside championship contender, and I believe finished in the top 3 or 4 in points by the end of the season, as McLaren became the biggest adversaries a lot of the year, the second half, to Red Bull, and they came close to winning multiple races near the end of the season. I expect Lando Norris to have a really good year in 2024, and I think McLaren is going to continue being very, very impressive in the 2024 season. And I think Lando Norris coming back and signing that multi-year extension is the right decision and call. His contract had gone, I believe, through 2024, so they were going to have to get a deal done to make sure that Lando Norris was going to be sticking around. I think they're making the right decision overall, and I'm very glad and very happy to see that Lando Norris once again is going to be staying with McLaren. I think he'll do a really great job with McLaren in Formula One for many years to come. And again, I'm very happy to see that Lando Norris has signed this extension and will be with McLaren for the foreseeable future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the NASCAR Mexico broadcast. Now, Fox Sports confirmed their lineup for the Cup Series race. Obviously, Kevin Harvick, Clint Bowyer, and Mike Joy are going to be in the Fox Sports booth. I think Josh Sims is going to be on pit road, and I think that Regan Smith and Jamie Little also are going to be there as well. But for the NASCAR Mexico broadcast, which is going to be televised on FS1 this year, Adam Alexander, Michael Waltrip, and Brad Keselowski will call the broadcast. Very interesting move. Obviously, this is going to be the first NASCAR Mexico Series race that has been televised on a national television on Fox Sports 1. This will take place, of course, before the Cup Series race and the Last Chance qualifier in the main event do end up taking place. I think it's interesting that they are going to be bringing Adam Alexander, Michael Waltrip, and Brad Keselowski in. Just make sure you know how to pronounce the names and do a really good job on that, because I don't want things to happen there. Will be that they can do a really good job on the broadcast. I wish Michael Waltrip wasn't there. I love to see more younger talent come in. Unlike Michael Waltrip, in my opinion, really is not that great of a broadcaster and probably should not be in the booth, in my opinion. So nonetheless, it's really good to see that he will be working, that they've announced the broadcast lineup. Happy that the lineup they have. I wish they would change it a little bit, though, in certain instances, but nonetheless, really happy and glad to see that once again, they have confirmed the lineup for 2024. Really exciting, really solid, and really awesome stuff overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ros Chastin. Now, over the last week or so, Bob Pockrass has been doing interviews with drivers that came out during the production days, and Fox and him have been posting a lot of clips on their social media pages. One thing that got me interested is what Ros Chastin had to say about signing as Shane Van Gisbergen, Zane Smith, and Conor Lich. Shane Van Gisbergen is going to run the full season in Xfinity with Colleague Racing, and is also going to run a lot of races in Cup, running around 7 NASCAR Cup Series races. Zane Smith is going to drive the number 71 car for Spire Motorsports and Cup, which of course have alliance with Trackhouse Racing. And Conor Lich has a development contract with Trackhouse Racing and will make his Xfinity Series and Truck Series debut at some point in 2024. It's also really, really exciting because I think Ros Chastin is very, very excited about that, bringing all these people in, and Justin Marks bringing everybody in. It really is going to be interesting to see how the long future goes, because I don't know what happens to Daniel Suarez going down the road, because there's a really good chance and possibility that if Daniel Suarez does not step up to the plate, he may end up getting replaced by either Shane Van Gisbergen or Zane Smith. And I think at this point, if you're Trackhouse Racing, while you are excited to bring all this talent in to the Trackhouse Racing family, you're going to have to figure out exactly what you're going to do long-term with your team. Considering the fact that long-term, there are going to be issues. Trackhouse has 2 charters, and granted, they have said publicly that they're more than likely going to find a way to try to get a 3rd charter, incorporate Zane full-time. But I think Daniel Suarez really needs to step up to the plate, especially if Ros Chastin being excited about them coming in to work with Trackhouse this year. I really believe Daniel Suarez needs to have a very solid year and needs to contend for the playoffs, because otherwise I think Daniel Suarez will be on the hot seat, and there might be a chance and possibility, despite the fact he does bring sponsorship and funding with him, there is a solid chance and possibility that Daniel Suarez could be out of the ride if he does not step up to the plate and step up his game in 2024, because he kind of struggled last year, and in my opinion, he needs to do much better in the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season. Otherwise, his ride might end up being in jeopardy. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cory Le Joy. As Cory Le Joy confirmed on the Stacking Pennies podcast earlier tonight that he will run the Truck Series race at Daytona International Speedway with Spire Motorsports. The number he did not confirm, but I would not be surprised or shocked if he's driving the number 7 truck, which is the same number that he has ran in the NASCAR Cup Series, of course, which he's ran since 2021. Cory Le Joy did also run this race last year in 2023. I believe finished in the top 10 or top 5 and led 19 laps and came very close to winning this race and event. Cory Le Joy is a very underrated super speedway racer, so he, in my opinion, has a really solid chance, a really great shot, and a good opportunity to potentially go out there and win with Trackhouse Racing this time around. I think he'll be a pretty big, not Trackhouse, with Spire. I think he'll be a very solid threat and contender to the Truck Series. We know Spire Motorsports has made a ton of investment. Remember, they purchased Kyle Busch Motorsports, so they're going to be really fast in qualifying for sure, and they've got a really solid lineup. There's a lot of rumors that Roger Croft might be going over there in 2024. It's not been officially confirmed, but he's expected more than likely to head over there in the 2024 season, and I think bringing Cory Le Joy in to work with the team in 2024, I think is a very solid and really great choice. So really happy about this and glad to see that in 2024, and we'll see Cory Le Joy driving the number 7 truck for Spire Motorsports in the Truck Series race. Really exciting and awesome stuff overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tony Breidinger. As it was announced on Friday that Tony Breidinger will be joining Venturi Motorsports full-time in 2024, driving the number 25 car. Tony Breidinger made select Truck Series starts with Tricon Garage last year, and there's a chance that possibly she still could make some select Truck Series starts this year. But I think for her sake, running full-time in ARCA next year is honestly a very solid and good move for her. I think Tony Breidinger definitely needs the development to get a lot better, and while I think she did show some improvement, she was pretty solid in her Truck Series starts last year. I think going and running full-time in ARCA Venturini with the series that isn't as strong as it used to be, I think going down there and learning and developing your craft in ARCA, I think that is a good move for her. Now, what are my expectations for Tony Breidinger? One, she needs to score a lot more top 5s than she did. Because remember last year, she did, to be fair, scored her first career top 5 finish and had a chance to win a couple races throughout the year. One, she needs to show improvement, get a lot of top 10s and even top 5s, because you're not going to have to deal with Jesse Love this year. You're going to have to deal with William Swash for a ton of races, but there's a lot of talent coming into Venturini Motorsports. Amber Balkin's going to be full-time this year. Chris Wright, who I don't think is the most talented driver in the world, is going to be full-time with this team this season. I think that Tony Breidinger just needs to keep her nose clean, not make a ton of mistakes, don't do anything stupid, and just perform at the best of your ability. Because if she can do really, really good, I believe that she has a really good chance and opportunity to be extremely competitive. I'm excited about this for her, though. I'm glad that she is returning to ARCA in 2024. Again, I think she will be able to make the most and the best out of it with this team this year. I think Shannon Rourke more than likely will be her crew chief. She's probably going to be the main driver at the team and the main focus, probably the best driver on that team this season, more than likely that is full-time. Hopefully she can make the best of it and show some improvement. It'd be really cool to see her get a first career win. I'm not expecting her to do that, but it would be really exciting and awesome if she was able to potentially get her first career ARCA Series win. Again, I think it's going to be tough for her, but I think she does at least have a little bit of a chance and opportunity to go and do really well in ARCA with this team in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brody Kei. Last night, there was a really shocking report that came out about Brody Kei from SpeedCafe.com on Twitter in their page, confirming that Brody Kei has apparently split ways with Erebus Motorsports. This is absolutely huge because Brody Kei has been with Erebus Motorsports over the course of the last couple of years. And why this is such a huge story is because for two major reasons. One, he was supposed to go back to that team in 2024 and is coming off of just winning the most recent Supercars Series Championship. This is about as big as when Nico Rosberg made the decision to go ahead and retire from Formula One into early 2017 after winning the Formula One Championship in 2016. Or when Carl Edwards, after competing for a championship in the Cup Series, didn't announce retirement around my birthday in 2017 from the NASCAR Cup Series and has not made a return since, so he's indicated at times that he wants to return. This is a huge deal. This is now the second of the two drivers at that organization that are not going to be back. But the other reason that it's a huge deal for NASCAR fans is because this could have a massive and huge implications on his future in NASCAR racing. Because remember, he was supposed to make a couple select starts with RCR this year. And remember, Richard Childress Racing does have a technical alliance with Erebus Motorsports. That's why Kyle Busch is heavily rumored to potentially be going over there to run a Supercars race at some point in 2024, probably during the Adelaide 500. They're trying to set that up. Now, this doesn't fully mean that he may not be out of RCR. He might still get the chance to run a few races with RCR, but what could this mean for his future in NASCAR? Well, there was a tweet tweet that came out, I think, from Peter Adderton showing a Walmart car and potentially showing that he may make some starts with this team in 2024. We're going to have to wait and see what happens with Brody Kei. Again, we know that there were reports and speculation that Brody Kei was supposed to make around, I think, 4 or 5 starts with RCR this year. I wonder with this news coming out now that this means more than likely that he is not going to make a return to RCR and make more starts, because he doesn't want to really run full time. But maybe this deciding to leave Erebus after a lot of issues with Barry Ryan, I wonder if this means that we potentially could see Brody Kei make an early jump over to the NASCAR Cup Series and race there in 2024. It'd be very interesting to see come over and race in NASCAR. I think a lot of fans would definitely love to see him come over and race in NASCAR, and maybe he will. It's not confirmed at this point, but I really hope he does decide to go ahead and make the decision to come over and race in NASCAR in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, this story I really have not been able to cover as much here on the channel, but a couple of weeks ago, Kyle Busch was speaking to Bob Pockrass, I think during media days about a week or 2 ago, and he basically told Bob Pockrass that Joe Gibbs did not try to sell him all the way back in 2022. According to what Kyle Busch said, he says they put their eggs in one basket with the Oracle deal. Says he told them to look at outside sponsorship. And he basically said that Oracle just signed a $500 million deal with Red Bull in 2022 and basically confirmed that he tried to tell them to go after some outside sponsorship and do what Richard Childress Racing is doing, but they would not budge and they put all the eggs in Oracle deal, which obviously, unfortunately, fell through, which is not a major shock and surprise. Look, this does not surprise or shock me, especially with how Joe Gibbs Racing has used to do it in the past, where they used to get one full season sponsor for every single one of their events. They try to chase that one major sponsor, but over the last few years, a lot of teams have had to change their philosophy when it comes to finding sponsors. That's what Richard Childress Racing has done, and that's one of the main reasons why Kyle Busch has been able to find a lot of sponsors. Even though it's less races and you're not getting one sponsor for a majority of races like Kyle Busch used to get with M&MS and they left the sport, they basically still have been able to have a lot of success finding that sponsorship, and Kyle Busch is already set and fully sponsored for the 2024 season because of that. He doesn't have to go out there and search and worry about sponsors for this upcoming season because he's got Zone coming in, he's got BetMGM is going to sponsor multiple races, Morgan & Morgan is going to sponsor. Kyle Busch has been able to pick up a ton of sponsors over the course of the last couple of years, including Cheddar's as well. Back in 2022, look, a lot of things have changed. Number one, Kyle Busch wasn't performing as well back in 2022, and Kyle Busch absolutely 100% needed a change of scenery when all this went down. And look what Kyle Busch was able to do in year number 1. I know the second half of the year at Richard Childress Racing really did not go swell, and he did struggle in the second half of the year. He was very inconsistent, but in the first half of the season, we were talking about Kyle Busch potentially winning his 3rd championship in his Cup Series career and won 3 of the first 15 races. At the time, only William Byron had 3 wins. And I know, like I said, he struggled in the second half and at one point had 5 or 10 straight consecutive races where he was performing at a very high level, getting consistent top 5s and top 10s on a week-by-week basis. Obviously, what I talk about is at RCR, they made a lot of executive changes during this offseason, bringing Mike Verlander in. And look, also when you think about Ty Gibbs is, of course, the grandson of Joe Gibbs, and Ty Gibbs is a lot cheaper of a driver to bring in. And one of the biggest things too is Monster Energy is backing Ty Gibbs, has been backing him really since his ARCA days, and sponsors in a majority of Ty Gibbs' races. So of course when he has a full season sponsor that does sponsor a majority of the season, even though Monster Energy does sponsor drivers like Tyler Reddick and did sponsor Kurt Busch and a couple other drivers, basically it's a lot cheaper to go with a younger driver because they're not asking for as much money, because Kyle Busch is one of the more richer drivers. And he did have to reveal that they were talking about making him be in that car unsponsored for 2023 because Joe really actually wanted to keep Kyle Busch around, but Kyle Busch said, after all I've done for you guys, being at this team for nearly 20 years, I want to basically be able to go and change my career. And I think, like I said, Kyle Busch had a massive career resurgence last season and was able to accomplish a lot. again, it's cheaper, like I said, for Joe Gibbs to go after for multiple sponsors. Now, Denny Hamlin, in fact, we know that FedEx has cut back their sponsorship with Denny Hamlin. Christopher Bell is sponsored by a lot of different companies and brands. I know DeWalt sponsored for almost half the season, but still, DeWalt and Rheem, they're kind of the same thing. And I think when you look at Kyle Busch, they were not going to be able to find that Oracle sponsor deal because most companies don't do that anymore. We've lost a lot of companies as sponsors. M&MS, Lowe's, Mountain Dew's really no longer in the sport, though they did sponsor Justin Haley and College Racing last season. You don't see Home Depot in the sport anymore. Office Depot's no longer in the sport. Aflac's gone. Viagra, a lot of these big companies are gone because they are focusing on a lot of different paths. And we just lost Smithfield, and they're likely no longer going to be in the sport as well. So as much as it's disappointing to see this news, it's not a massive surprise and shock to see that they backed off on their sponsorship and their deals right there. Nonetheless, it's interesting to think about, and it doesn't surprise or shock me at all in the slightest to see that Joe Gibbs really wasn't trying to sponsor Kyle Busch or sell and bring sponsors to Kyle, considering the fact Kyle Busch is now a lot cheaper and doesn't perform as well. And of course, Ty Gibbs is a lot cheaper. Doesn't really surprise or shock me overall, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 Racing. Now, I've talked about this 2311 Racing story on the channel, I think once or twice up to this point, but there's a little bit of an interesting little update that came out, I think, from Austin Knetsky from Motorsports Wire and Steven Taranto. Last week, on this channel, late in the week, I talked about the fact that David Wilson had spoken to the media, I believe on Wednesday or Thursday of last week, and he entitled that 2311 Racing is in fact planning to run a third car potentially at some point in 2024. And David Wilson told the media, said, stay tuned. Last year in 2023, 2311 Racing did in fact debut their number 67 car. They had Travis Strana run the Daytona 500 in that car, and also they had Kamui Kobayashi who drove in the Indianapolis road course. Now there's been potential possibility that Kamui Kobayashi could get back behind the wheel. But of course, this car is not going to run full time. Now, a lot of people are wondering if this car is going to run the Daytona 500. As of now, they are not planning to run this car in the Daytona 500 in 2024. But now the big question is, with the 67 car, who could they get behind the wheel? I look at drivers who are kind of associated with the 2311 Racing family. What about maybe someone like a Chandler Smith, perhaps? What about Corey Heim? Chandler Smith is supposedly one of the reserve drivers for Joe Gibbs Racing, and obviously Joe Gibbs Racing and 2311 Racing have a pretty massive technical alliance. Chandler Smith also has made a couple Select Cup Series starts with College Racing last year, so he has a little bit of experience. I also mentioned Corey Heim because of the fact that Corey Heim is the reserve driver, not just for 2311 Racing, but Legacy. But I believe in not so distant future, there's a great chance he's going to be full-time with 2311. Maybe getting him a couple Select Cup Series starts would not be a bad shout. What about Sheldon Creed? Sheldon Creed, obviously, of course, is driving for Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series. He has made a Cup start with Live Fast Motorsports last season, so maybe, just maybe, we see him get a chance and an opportunity getting behind the wheel of this number 67 car. What about Eric Almirola? There was rumors maybe that Eric Almirola could replace Denny Hamlin, considering the fact that Eric Almirola is working as a mentor with Joe Gibbs Racing for a lot of races in the Xfinity Series. He'll be working as a mentor this season for Chandler Smith and, of course, Sheldon Creed, helping both those guys out, and also drivers of the 19 car, that being, of course, Taylor Gray, also William Sawalich, also Joe Graff Jr., and also working with Ryan Truex this year. Maybe they could have chose Eric Almirola because he's a pretty good super speedway racer. Maybe they would bring him in. What about getting Carl Edwards out of retirement? I know Carl Edwards has been interested in doing a one-off in the past, so maybe they get Carl Edwards out of retirement. Probably not likely at this point, but you never know. I think a lot of us want to see Carl Edwards come out and do a one-off retirement. He was spotted at Daytona not too long ago, so maybe Carl Edwards is planning something. But probably not at this point. He probably just out there at Daytona enjoying the view and probably coming over as a fan out of Daytona. But then I start thinking about international potential possibilities, and you look at the World Endurance Championship Toyota lineup. You have Brendan Hartley, who in my opinion is a really good endurance driver. He's someone who has ran IndyCar in the past. Has he ran IndyCar? I'm not sure, but he's ran Formula One, so maybe he could come over and run. You've also got Nick DeVries, who's no longer in Formula One, who's in the World Endurance Championship now. Maybe they go with him. Maybe also they could go with someone like a Kamui Kobayashi. It won't obviously be Kurt Busch, like some people would probably want. But I think the best guess is Lewis Hamilton. Denny Hamlin, back in November at the Las Vegas Grand Prix, was spotted in the F1 paddock, in the Mercedes paddock, talking to Lewis Hamilton. And Bubba Wallace has also stated publicly that he has wanted to see Lewis Hamilton come over. I remember back at Richmond not too long ago, I think back in August or September of last year, and he was saying that he really wants to see Lewis Hamilton come over and race in NASCAR. I think Lewis Hamilton would be really fun to get. Now, obviously, there aren't a lot of opportunities to bring a guy like Lewis Hamilton over, considering the fact that the Formula One schedule is only seeming to get longer. But Lewis Hamilton right now only has a contract through 2025. So Lewis Hamilton's probably getting closer to the end of his Formula One career and is nearly 40 years old. He isn't going to be in Formula One much longer, considering the fact that Formula One drivers don't usually go past the age of 40 or 41 unless you're Fernando Alonso or even Kimi Räikkönen. A lot of drivers are retiring at a much younger age. Hell, even Max Verstappen is already considering retirement at a much younger age as well. It may only go through his contract, which is 2028. I think there is a chance that they go after Lewis Hamilton. Now, how many races do I think the 67 car runs? Probably not a ton, but I do think that 2311 Racing, more than likely, in the not-so-distant future, I think they are going to make this 67 car a full-time entry. I think that's one of their major goals and ambitions going into the future. Is, like I said, I think they want to have a full-time car in the future for this third car. They've publicly said this. Denny Hamlin has stated that he wants to have a third full-time entry, and I think that will eventually go to Corey Heim. But as of right now, if you want my early prediction, I think it will be Lewis Hamilton who more than likely will get behind the wheel of the seat. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that, but nonetheless, I really hope 2311 Racing does, in fact, bring his third car out to the racetrack for many races in the 2024 season. So, that is your today's for NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What drivers would you like to see drive the number 67 car for 2311 if that car shows up? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about some of the other news we talk about, including Joe Gibbs not trying to sell sponsors for Kyle Busch at the time in 2022? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, there'll be another NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last couple days. Then tomorrow on the channel, more than likely, you're going to see race picks for the Busch Light Clash. You're going to see the Truck Series lineup at some point probably this week. You're also going to see another NASCAR news video, most likely on Friday. And also this weekend, we've got race reviews for the Busch Light Clash. Hopefully weather can hold us so we can get the races in. We do have racing this weekend as NASCAR is officially back. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.